I've done a lot of looking back and trying to watch Wayne in those moments. I think I bring that into my coaching. I bring that into working with clients who are building businesses, but inevitably life and business cannot be separated. So we end up talking about much more than just business. And I try to rewind the game film on what happened and what were some of the decision points and what took me there, and then of course what was the recovery step.
Man of Mastery, episode 63 with Wayne Herring of Business Builder Camp. Welcome or welcome back. I super appreciate you guys being here. I know your time is valuable, and I appreciate that you're making an investment of that time in this show. And so it is here about bringing you value. I love it when I get feedback from people who let me know that they tuned in, let me know what worked for them or helped for them or inspired something with them. And today, I think you're going to get more of the same from Wayne Herring. Really, this show in general, this podcast is here to help shine light on what's holding us back. A lot of times we don't know what we don't know. And so it takes somebody else asking or saying something from another perspective. And that comes from what we're doing here, which is providing an opportunity to surround ourselves with people and ideas that offer some new perspective and challenge us to grow and be better. Or as a coach of mine says, there's no there. There's no end to the journey. There's always a next level, even if we maybe can't see it ourselves or at the moment. So you're going to find all that, I think, in the perspective Wayne shares today. He's just an awesome guy he's real, he's open. He's open about not being perfect, about being a recovering alcoholic and workaholic. He offline, he was telling me his family dealt with some near-death things recently, and all that comes to bear as a coach, a consultant. He's just a great example of somebody who does help us with those blind spots. He's such a vocal cheerleader for his clients, and he specializes in men building businesses of their own. But he's not a pure academic. He is a businessman who's been there himself. He helped grow a family business that they sold. And the really cool connection here between all of this is they didn't just sell it by getting better at sales and business development. Wayne had a coach that he mentions who helped him focus on personal development and intentional living. And it was Wayne's work on Wayne that paid itself back in getting better in a lot of ways, but including getting better at business that helped grow the family business successfully to allow them to transact. So today we talk about some other things around witnessing objectively yourself, kind of changing perspective so you can own and lead change. We talk about family boundaries and communication. Wayne's got some actionable tools that he uses that he shares around calendar blocks, where he allows himself time to move and be between meeting after meeting, about spousal communication and blocking time for that, and planning, about how he uses his mornings productively. And about finding other people who get you and push you. So I think you'll get a feel for Wayne is the type of guy that just likes to have genuine conversations and connections. So before we dive in, just one more thing I want to preview and leave you with is that Wayne has offered for our podcast listeners a few free tools following this episode, including, if you like it and you think you would connect with Wayne, a chance to have a conversation with him. Spend 20 minutes for free on the phone with him, invest your time, connect with Wayne, and see if anything comes out of it from a business builder camp perspective or otherwise. So those are in those links, and where to find that and get in touch with Wayne are in the show notes for this episode, which I'll have on the website and I'll mention here at the end of our talk. But without further delay, let's dive in, hear from Wayne himself. Hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. All right, welcome Wayne Herring, Business Builder Camp. Good to see you today. Thanks, brother.
Great to be with you. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see you again. We connected a little bit offline last week, and I I think we've got some good stuff to unpack here today. So let's just start with, I want to get into what you do with Business Builder Camp and who you do it for, but let's just start with where you are right now. You got some pretty cool stuff you posted a day or two ago about where you're holed up in Maine. And there's some stuff about that I really like. So tell me where you are.
Sure. Yeah, I live in Pennsylvania, but we are in northern Maine right now. I'm in a little town called Dover, Foxcroft, and I'm in a rented hotel room for the afternoon. Really, I came here specifically to do this interview with you, and my family is about 15 minutes away at a lake called Sebec Lake, and my wife has they have a camp. Her and her family have a camp on the lake, and it's a place that they've had since like 1950, so well before she was born. And so I would, it's the third generation of her family, fourth if you count our children, that have been going to Sebec Lake. So yeah, so we're on vacation, and it was last minute. We had planned it. We were going to be in Canada for this week. We had a whole thing planned, and Airbnbs and all this kind of deal. And then several months ago, of course, with state of COVID and Canadian border mostly being shut down to tourists, we canceled all of that and weren't going to do any kind of vacation. So this, at the last minute, my wife really wanted to come see her twin and go to the camp again. And so here we are, and I'm happy to be here, but I also had work things going on, and I just don't do very well when I'm sort of working, sort of on vacation. And I think it's confusing to my kids, right? Because if I'm sitting there and I'm trying to look at a laptop and they'd like to jump in the water, or they want to come ask a question or something, it gets weird. So I like trying to have good boundaries. So having a hotel room like this in town is a good way to make that happen.
Yeah, I really like that little tidbit. You know, it's not really part and parcel to your business per se, but you put that out on Facebook a day or two ago, and I want to start with that as a lead in because I think a lot of people struggle, particularly in the work environment that we're in right now, but
Yeah.
even just in a world that we're in with devices and all the distractions that there are, finding a challenge in being present in any singular thing they're doing at any given time versus 2 feet in many
Yeah.
worlds.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it is part. I will say it is part and parcel to my business, because I work with men primarily right now who are business owners and entrepreneurs, and I want to go there with family stuff. I want to go there with boundaries, devices, communication with my wife, because I've made a lot of mistakes, I guess, and they continue. But I'm also pretty reflective, and I try to watch what I'm almost like outside myself, watching what's going on, watching my thinking, and then trying to think, how can I share that with other people, and take the lead and be vulnerable and say, these are the things I screw up. This is what's working right now. This is how I'm trying to address that. I think that's in service to the business owner clients that I coach and who are members of camp. So yeah.
No, that's great. There's a lot in there. I heard you say several things. So just for the audience, so I know you're a father of four, right?
Yep.
And married 18 years as of just a few days ago. So congratulations.
Yeah, a few days before the recording this. That's right. Thanks.
Yeah, and the camp there at Maine. I saw the picture online. Looks like you did hit the lottery with that one. So
Oh yeah, when my wife told me while we were a courting, that was the phrase that came up the other night in Trivial Pursuit. While we were a courting, that her family had a camp on a lake and there were kayaks there, I was like, "Ooh, this is good. Yeah, this
that's
is
a
really good."
that's a
So yeah, I
winner.
hit the jackpot
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
lots of ways, not just that.
Right, right. Well, one of the things that there, come here, buddy. You can say hi. Life happens during
All
podcasts.
this is
So
good.
here's my
Hey,
son.
there is the warrior. Wait, didn't you did something really cool today? Is that
Yeah,
right?
he can't hear you through the headset, but yeah, this morning he had a workout 4 a.m. 4:30 a.m. Pacific time with Joe DeSena, Spartan founder. So they got their workout on this morning. All right,
Way to
thanks,
go,
buddy.
man. Good stuff.
Sounds good. All right. So yeah, distance learning. They got to go get school books. So sorry about that for everybody, but good chance to introduce the little champion to you, Wayne, and the audience.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
Everybody can't see it who's hearing this, but it was so good to see your son pop in there for a moment. And I
popped
was trying
in
to cheer for him, but
and said hi. He just couldn't
yeah,
hear you cheering, but
right
hopefully he
on.
got the point. And that kind of goes to the boundaries thing. Like that stuff's kind of fun. And I can work it into a podcast. It doesn't work so well when I'm on a serious consulting client sort of Zoom call.
Yeah, but I mean, this recent kind of shakeup of the world with Corona, I think has normalized a lot of that. A lot of that has become okay, and we've seen behind the curtain of each other's personal lives a bit. And oh wow, we're all humans. We're not just running around playing adult consulting or whatever our business is. So
Yeah, I feel the same way. It has pulled back the curtain a little bit, and yeah, it lightens things up, gets you that personal connection, right? But on boundaries, one of the things I wanted to ask, I love that you have the dedication to your business and the business you're growing and the men you work with through Builder Camp, uh, but the dedication to make sure you continue those commitments and found a way to make that productive with a boundary to then also show up and be present with family time. Do you do anything else as a routine or a ritual when you're switching gears? Maybe not when you guys are traveling. Let's just say you're coming home from work, arriving home from a meeting, or vice versa, leaving home to get in business mode. Do you have anything in that sense that you use to switch gears and mindset?
yeah, so most of the time, my commute consists of going from my house out to the building. So we have a detached building that was a farm building in the days of active organic farming at our place. And so my commute really consists of walking down the rock path and going into the building. Um, but as far as our routine, I think you mentioned in the days of devices, right? And I don't do this perfectly. There's plenty of times where I screw this up and I end up violating what I'm about to say. But I've gotten a whole lot better at taking my device, turning it off, and putting it in a drawer or putting it somewhere. So when the break goes from working to family time, that transition of physically taking the phone or the device and putting it away is necessary. When I go to my son's little league games, sometimes I leave it in the truck. And I think some of that has to do too, Michael, with what kind of like spiritual headspace I'm in, or what's going on. Like there's times I'm wound up and I can't have the phone with me because I would be on it. And there's other times where I'm not so wound up and I could have the phone and it might be okay to have it there, and I might check the time or know if my wife texted me or something, and I'm okay. It's rather like my alcoholism, which I recovered from it. It's rather like that. I think it's depending on my spiritual condition. Other things that come to mind for breaks are I am really attentive to calendar and really attentive to scheduling things and blocking out time. So that's on a hourly basis. So my coaching, I do a lot of either one-on-one coaching with business owners, or I do a lot of group mastermind style calls, and they're all scheduled, right? And I had a coach, Melissa Ford, who I worked with, and she introduced me to the idea of putting buffer blocks around my appointments. And you'll laugh, but they're purple blocks in my calendar. Like they're color coded, they're purple, and they say move and be. So it's move, get up and move, shift position, and be. And I've got those purple blocks all through my calendar, and that has been a huge help to make transitions and to make sure I'm really on whatever it is that I'm doing and getting some rest time
I
for my
really love
body.
that. So with that purple block, that would be something like if you got an hour of a real focused meeting, then you might block off 30 minutes after that or before that. Is that how that would work?
Both sides of it.
Both
I
sides.
want to make sure I have 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after. And that doesn't mean that I'm spending 30 minutes moving and being or meditating or something. What it means is that's the cue or the reminder to get up, shift positions, move, maybe sit and do relax, or maybe go in the house and be around Kathy and the kids for a few minutes. But then I may come back and I might get ready then for the next time. For the next call. But what I used to do is run my calendar so tight with appointments, like boom, 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 boom. And then I'd be trying to end one and then going on to the next one. And, sometimes I'd get a little bit sloppy and it'd be 3 minutes over and I'd be, oh my goodness, I got to pee. And I'm like, what am I going to do? To start the next one. So that's been a big help.
I like that. Yeah. Thanks for that note. I just wrote it down. I just finished reading Essentialism
Yeah. It's good.
by McEwen.
Greg.
And somewhere in there was I can't remember his first name. There was a mention of an executive, might have been from Oracle or doesn't matter, who would schedule 90 minutes for a 60-minute meeting. And the
Mhm.
purpose was the same, to leave a buffer
Sure.
on the back end.
Right.
But I like the concept, but my fear was that there's this, sort of law of physics that gases will expand to fill a space,
Yeah. Yeah.
meetings expand to fill the
Mhm.
time allotted. So I like that. Go ahead and schedule it for 60 and then have your purple block for 30.
Yeah, and then there's times I'll put in, if it's like I put writing time certain mornings. So I've been writing a weekly email and I know that's on Monday morning and I know that has to happen between 6 and 7:30. And same thing, like those things have to be blocked out or they just don't happen. And then my wife and I, this trip here to Maine got a little bit wonky because of trying to fit it in. But in general, we sit down every Monday at 10 o'clock and we go to that little building I have. So we get away from the house. And we talk about two things. We often talk about the kids and like what's going on in their life and getting on the same page with how we're parenting them, leading them, what they need as far as resources. And then we work a lot on calendar and we get synced up and take a look at what's coming up. And then, we have a big printed paper calendar that we use for the whole year, and same thing. So that's the biggest things about transitions for me, is just having calendared out and scheduled ahead of time.
That's really cool too. So I think what I heard you saying there sounds to me like a practice that probably a lot of us have in the business world. We'd have some sort of start of the week kickoff status, what's going
Yep.
on, what are the goals, end the week wrap up, make sure our
Yeah.
calendars
Yeah.
are synced up. And we realize how much communication and synchronicity and things like that are important at home. But what you just described is probably a practice that most of us apply better at work than we do in our personal lives.
Well, I've sure been there. Right? Like I've done a whole lot better. It's easier to go to work for me a lot of times than it is to do family. But this is something that has adapted, kind of like budget meetings, same thing, going over dollars and resource. It's resources. Really, it's resource allocation for a family and a partnership that my wife and I have.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Allocation of scarce resources. So you've alluded to the farm and the sort of building our workspace on the farm there a little bit. So I dove right into some tactics, but let's
Yeah.
back up to how you came to where you live and what you did before Business Builder Camp.
Yeah. In a work sense and family and some of the things I brought up, I went to school for civil engineering, and I then went to graduate school for geotechnical engineering, which is soil and rock and using those materials to build things. And when I went to Virginia Tech, I met my wife. So that was good. And I don't do geotechnical engineering anymore, but my wife is still around and I learned a lot from that career. We went from there, we moved to Colorado, and I worked for a design build contracting firm for 2 years. I knew that I knew I wanted to work in construction rather than design when I came out of school. And so went to Colorado, did drilling and blasting, and got to do some really cool stuff, hanging off ropes, doing rockfall protection, um, helping hold back mountains, things of that nature. And we came back home to Pennsylvania. That's where I'm from. And of course she's from Maine, as I've said. And I went into consulting engineering when we came home, and we got married and started having children. And consulting engineering was good, but I didn't like being in an office, and I'm not very detail oriented. So I left that and I went and I joined a family business. I joined the business that my dad had started 12 years prior to when I got there. And when I went to go work with my dad at his company, it started selling used car warranties to used car dealers is what we did. Um, I, I helped him grow, and I was exposed to leadership training. The first leadership book I ever read was Pat Lencioni's Four Obsessions of an Extraordinary Executive, which I still buy for a lot of clients. um, Pat Lencioni's work is excellent when it comes to building a leadership team and then building a culture and getting everybody on the same page and moving forward. And so I was exposed to that in helping to build Dad's company. I also met a guy named Warren Lewis, who almost always end up talking about in podcasts. And Warren Lewis was my first ever business coach, life coach, executive coach, sales trainer for my team. And he he just introduced me to a whole world of personal development and intentional living that I didn't know existed. And he helped us grow. And there were other people too, other consultants then that came in and helped Dad and I and a whole bunch of other amazing people grow this company. And eventually, 9 years later, we sold the company for the second time. We sold it to a publicly traded firm, and I had started farming somewhere along the line, about halfway through my time at Preferred Warranties. I don't want to say it's not that I had it all figured out when it came to leading and building a sales team. That's certainly not true, but I'd figured out a lot. And I had really good people. I had some really good sales managers who were out there leading little teams. And I had also gotten sober. I'd quit drinking and gone through a recovery process. And I know you talk a lot about running and physical fitness. I had the running craze and trail running that started. And then my wife and I, it was one of those intentional things where we're in a diner in Maine here. We were on a trip to come see her family. And we went to this little diner called the Maine Diner, and we sat down, and on the back of the placemat, I said, let's write down some things that we would like to build together, do together, how we'd like things to change for our family, so on and so forth. And it was after I'd gotten sober. It was after my thinking had cleared and I was able to start to plan for the future. So we sat there, and one of the things we wrote down was that we wanted to grow food for our family. We wanted to grow organic meats for our family. And we had bought some organic pasture raised chicken from a guy who then became a client of mine, Nate Thomas from Breakaway Farms. And I said, when I was a kid, I raised pheasants and I hated doing it. It was a chore that I just did because I had to. But I know how to raise poultry. We could do this. So we went to Tractor Supply and we bought 10 meat chickens. And I didn't even have the pen built for them when we bought the chicken. So my wife and I think like we're a lot alike like that, Michael. Like we just jump into stuff, just jump in and then figure it out, like build the parachute on the way down. So we got the 10 chickens and we built a pen for them. and I kind of liked it. And somebody gave me a book that was about raising pasture raised organic chickens. And it was by Joel Salatin, who is like an icon in the pasture organic farming world. And I just ate it up. I ate the book up, and we went back to Virginia Tech where we had met on a little trip, and we went by his farm, and I watched what he was doing, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this guy's like legit farming and like feeding his family and like making enough money to make this a go. And he's like cobbled together all these little systems. Like that'd be really fun to build that and do that. So we moved to 20 acres eventually. There's a whole lot more to it, but we moved to 20 acres, started a farm. And at the peak of it, we raised 2,000 broiler chickens and a couple hundred turkeys and 50 pigs, and had built a little community of families who were all coming to buy meat from us. And we had the building that was a pole building. That was where we harvested chickens. And now that's the coaching building, because when we sold Preferred Warranties, I knew that the farm wasn't going to pay the bills. And I always loved what Warren Lewis, this guy in my life, did. And so I asked him if he would help me learn how to be a coach consultant like him. So there's a whole lot more to it, but I've really run on now for a while. But circuitous route, that's how we got to the farm in 20 acres in a building with floor to ceiling windows and comfy chairs to look out the field and reflect upon your life and business with me, and when I have my coaching hat on. So
Yeah, no worries. It's a good journey you took us down there, and that's life, right? You kind of zigged and zagged and found Wayne and found the path you're on now. And I want to get a bit more to the men you work with and how and why, but I guess on our way there, one of the things that you mentioned there briefly. So, my podcast is called Man of Mastery. And
yeah,
I've actually, it's funny, of people who reach out and kind of provide feedback, there's been a good number of women, and it was never intended to be only for male audiences. But I think we speak best about what we know best, which is ourselves, and kind of,
right.
what we understand the most. And, you, I think, also gravitate towards a group of men. There's this world that we live in, at least in this country right now, where there is a trend towards demonizing masculinity, right? There's maybe there's a group or a mindset of even trying to go to the other extreme. But you're a guy who loves to be outdoors, has done physical endeavors, literally started a farm. By the way, I didn't mention when we talked, my wife and I started a natural and organic food retail brick and mortar business years ago too. So we have
Oh,
something else
well,
in common.
nice.
But you're like a man's man, right? And you're running this business group for men out on a farm. But I love that, and maybe what people think of when they're thinking like, manhood is evil. Well, you've got more of the holistic package, right? You speak very openly about your recovery from alcohol, talk about therapy as a tool, another tool in the toolbox. We talk about
Yeah, for
yoga,
sure.
right? So you use the word vulnerability. So just to maybe dive into that a little bit, if you don't mind. And I know you were traveling a good deal for business at one point, and I've traveled a
Mm,
lot for business. I find that how I show up when I'm traveling isn't how I show up at home all the time, right? They don't always sync. And it kind of goes both ways. Like in some ways I'll be more disciplined about my diet when I'm on the road because I'll be intentional about the meal I have for dinner. There's no snacks in the hotel room to veer off course. I'll go to bed and I'll intermittent fast until the next day. It's just a little easier to maintain. There's no cupboard to run to, you
right.
know.
There's snacks in this hotel room. You're like,
Ah.
and there's no snacks. I'm like, there's snacks in this hotel room, and they're
sometimes
good.
they're sometimes
Want
they're
one?
punitively expensive. So just
Yeah.
but on the other hand, like when I'm on the road, it gets social. You're taking clients out. I probably drink too much or more than I do at home on the road, right? So did you find that to be a particular challenge in your case around alcohol when you were traveling, and did getting off the road change that for you, or how did you feel about that?
Um, yeah. So my journey in that area, I think being on the road allowed my alcoholism to run its course faster, which is probably a good thing. And so the way it went for me is when I was in Colorado working for the construction firm, I used to be out of town almost every night. And in that world, it was young construction guys, and I guess it was sort of acceptable or okay. Like we'd work. I don't know how looking back on it, I don't know how I did it. Like, we'd be running around the job sites in Aspen and Vale, getting up early, sometimes physically getting involved with the work, even though I was an engineer, and then we'd stay out, like, till 2 a.m. and get up and do it all over again, over and over. The young body is amazing. But partly what would happen is then when I would come back to Denver where my wife was, I was just in no mood to do much with her. I was wore out from the week. I was a workaholic, alcoholic. And then when we came home and I got involved in a traditional engineering firm and I wasn't traveling, certainly that there was some obstacles, right, to those behaviors or to having too much alcohol. However, then what happens is, and if anybody's listening and they can resonate, if this resonates with them, I'd be happy to talk with them offline. but what happens is if that's really a problem for you, like it was for me, when I'm at home and it's restricted, then I'm angry and I'm irritable and I'm discontent and I'm just not a happy camper and fun to be around. So then when I started working and being on the road with the sales build job, working with my dad, yeah, I didn't like the guy that I was because I was hiding cash in my bag so that my wife wouldn't question credit card statements and things like that. And money was tighter then for sure than it is now. But yeah, when I was out of town, then I could like do whatever I wanted to do, right? For sure. So it was easier. Um, but like I said, I think it brought me to a crash. It brought me to a crash point faster. It brought me to a bottom, as we would say, faster. And so I'm grateful for that. And there's again, a whole lot more that it would be to be said about that. But if there's anybody listening and they heard that and they want to chat about it, boy, I'm always happy to. So
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for being open with that. And I guess that's exactly what I wanted, is to open that up to the audience in case that resonates with anybody or they want to talk further with you on that. So, and I appreciate the self-awareness there, to understand not only what it looked like when you're on the road, but what did it look like when you came home, and how you showed up there.
I've done a lot of, yes. I've done a lot of looking back and trying to watch Wayne in those moments. I think I bring that into my coaching. I bring that into working with clients who are building businesses, but inevitably life and business cannot be separated. So we end up talking about much more than just business. And I try to rewind the game film on what happened and what were some of the decision points and what took me there, and then of course what was the recovery steps and what was my thinking at various stages of that. So yeah, I do try to do that quite a bit if it'll benefit other people.
Right, absolutely. Most of us learn the hard way by mistakes, right? So that's one of the great things about coaches. No coach is perfect, far from it. They've probably just made more mistakes faster to be able to absorb those lessons, and hopefully maybe help us either learn them faster, or avoid some of the same mistakes to the same gravity. So
Yeah.
let's dig in on Business Builder Camp. What type of businesses do you look to work with? How do you add value? What kind of guys would be interested?
Yeah, so I've been coaching full time for over 6.5 years now. I'm looking at the date, over 6.5 years. So time has flown, but certainly I always gravitated towards coaching type positions in work and training type positions in work. And Business Builder Camp is an offshoot of the coaching work that I did for the first, probably I'll say 5 years to market as to when Business Builder Camp started to become a thing. So I worked for 5 years. And by the way, I work with men and women and I love all of them. And you talked about you having a men's program and I'm building a men's program and this whole toxic masculine. I've heard of that. It's funny. Like I've heard of that. Like I hear about it and I get it. And I know that it exists. And I've got 3 daughters. And so I think about the world they're going into. And I had a wife who was in construction and had some really bad experiences. So like I'm aware of those things. And yet I don't know, like I like, I like yoga, and I really respect the women business builders that I've worked with. So it's present, it's out there, but it's like, I don't know, I don't spend a lot of time really going down deep. I think working with men, yep, like you said, makes sense because I am one, and I try to be open about the things my wife and I talk about. And like you, I've got a lot of women who will comment on posts I make and things like that. And the only danger about that I think about is I want all of those women that ever comment on my stuff where I'm trying to talk about how I do things well, I want them to know, like, I'm an idiot. And my wife, a lot. And my wife would tell you, like, that's the best part of Wayne. And then there's all the rest, right? So like that, the posts I make are when I'm on my game and I certainly do things right and I'm thinking about it. And then there's all the rest. And I'd like to think that I'm shrinking the all the rest part, but anyway, just know that I can
Fair,
be be a
fair
mess. There's
enough.
2 sides to that. So Business Builder Camp came from, I'm working with these business builders who are building companies. And there's a book called War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah,
You know that one?
I do.
Yeah. And so he's talking about, doing your work and doing your work in the world. And he's an author, so a lot of times his work is writing and getting it done. And he's talking to artists who they have a canvas and brushes or whatever their and oil paints or whatever their chosen tools are. But business building is an art too, and business building is an expression of human creativity. It's just that the canvas and the oils and the paintbrushes are things like money, people, processes, equipment, so on and so forth. And so I was working with these business owners to help them build business, and life started coming in. And then I realized that I could talk to men about my experiences and talk about how Catherine and I sit and do our calendar, right? And I've always loved gathering people live. And I would work with Steve, who's a client of mine, who's an Alaskan fisherman and has a boat and is awesome, and then has a tree care business. I would work with Steve, and something would come up, and I would think, oh, Jack Justice owns Ramblin' Jackson and does websites for landscapers. And I would think Jack could benefit by the conversation that Steve and I just had. So there's Wayne, the coach, and then the coaching process where we're creating space. But man, what if I could get these guys together and they could meet each other and they could problem solve? So Business Builder Camp, the first edition was, we rented a house in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and I just brought all my male clients together. And I did that partially because I had been in a male mastermind group with Aaron Walker called Iron Sharpens Iron. Had a great experience. I actually just rejoined that group for the second time because I was missing it. I'd had a good experience being in mastermind groups. I had these guys. In my recovery from alcoholism, I interacted with a lot of men who took me on a process and a journey to find recovery. So it's all those things come together. We rented a house, and I chose men because of cohabitating partially, and also just because like we got a lot in common, we got a lot in common. And I saw how quickly I had a whole book of notes and work exercises and all these things we're going to do, Michael. And as soon as I got these guys connected and talking about their businesses and families and lives and what was going, I quickly realized that all those notes that I'd put together were not going to be used, because those notes were primarily about me trying to teach people sales and marketing and the things I do a lot of times with clients. But I realized like they all had their own issues, and all I had to do was put them on a flip chart, list out, what the things were they want to work on, and then get after it and start working it. And amazing things happen with all of them. So coming off of that, it was then just natural to start thinking about how can I make a program where we do this more consistently. And that's where the current edition of Business Builder Camp has evolved from.
Okay, very cool. Is the camp aspect of that? So you got the one-on-one coaching, and then there is the maybe more explicitly or superficially business focused camp side of it. Is it all physical events, or in the current environment or ongoing, will it be a virtual component?
In the current environment, it makes it a little bit hard to get together, doesn't it? So there's three things, and it's kind of three levels. My one-on-one coaching, when it comes to working with men who are building businesses, falls under Business Builder Camp. To me, it's business builders, they're men. And the camp part of it is bringing them into my small circle and connecting them with others. So the one-on-one clients, I'm connecting them with the other people, and I'm connecting them on Slack. I'm connecting with them on LinkedIn. I connect with them on by stories that I tell one to the other. So, and then try to create those connections. So it's my one-on-one coaching, and then it's a mastermind group, which meets weekly and is a small group of men. And we're just building our first two groups out, have a handful of members. So that's Business Builder Camp Mastermind. And then the third thing we're building is what we call Base Camp. And Base Camp is entry level $99 a month program. But what we're doing with that group is creating a weekly call where they can come and connect with others and get questions answered by me and the group. And then also, not that I'm going to hold it up, but a big part of my process is using journaling. It's using a rhythm of taking inventory of my life, taking inventory of my business, taking inventory of what it is I want to create in the world. How, what is missing and what do I want to happen in the next 90 days? So in base camp, we bring that rhythm and process in and send everybody a big 120-day plan sheet, which is like, a sheet like you would, it goes back to my engineering days. I really like big pieces of paper, and I'm holding them up. Nobody else can, if your audio, you can't see it, but I have erasable pens. And those pens are great to work on a big plan sheet like that, to take stock on where you're at, what you want to create, write it out for the next 120 days. So that rhythm and that program is part of the Business Builder Camp family of programs as well.
Nice. I was imagining a big plotter sheet when you said that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
That's it.
I like that framework. So one of the things that you and I talked about off air last week, and I think this has come through implicitly in a couple things you mentioned. So just want to bring it to the surface.
Sure.
And I was just trying to look for. I owe you the name of this American philosopher who has this concept of the three spheres I described to you: the I,
really
we,
like
and
that.
it.
Yeah. I, we, and
And
it. Mm-hmm.
and the concept there for the audience is that as we progress in our business careers, we're advancing initially because we get good at the behaviors that benefit it, the company. And then leaders who move beyond that get good at the we, additionally good at the we, which is prospering and succeeding as a team, being team leaders and team members. But what really separates the truly exceptional leaders are the ones who understand that they also have to work on the I. They have to work on themselves. So
Yep.
it's doing that personal work outside of business that pays off, has a return in the business world, in family, in everything, really.
Right.
So it's understanding the importance of working on ourselves as much as we work on the mechanics and the business and the rhythm and all that.
Yeah, definitely.
So does that merge in from your coaching days, or you still do the one-on-one coaching? Does that factor into the Business Builder camp and Mastermind?
So thinking about working on me, what comes to mind is I'd mentioned this client, Steve Curian, and Steve Curian owns a company called Wild for Salmon. And just to give a shout out to him, like he's got a boat in Alaska named after his daughter. It's the Ava Jane. And he goes there for 6 weeks. He just got back on Bristol Bay. Thankfully, they had a fishing season, even with COVID. And Steve went up there and ran a crew. And it's one of those things where there's actually a show called Salmon Wars, which wasn't quite as popular as Deadliest Catch. And I don't think as many people die fishing for salmon, but it is very risky, and it's very like high energy, adrenaline, chasing the fish. And he's like, he probably wouldn't like me to say this, but he's like one of the, I'll just say one of the top fishermen on the bay year after year. And as he's matured, and as I've had experience working with him, he's just gotten better and better, and he doesn't run like as all over the place as he used to, but he's just learned the tricks and steadiness, right? And so Steve is a man's man, has this boat, fishes, and then back home in Pennsylvania, Wild for Salmon ships salmon all over the country on dry ice and then sells it locally. And it's something that started with him and his wife just bringing back a few coolers of salmon and trying to see if they could sell it at the local farmers market. And progressively, it grew, and they added some trucks that were wrapped and had freezer panels. They added a building, and they started doing processing, and they started making salmon burgers and all these things. Well, Steve also has a tree care business where he no longer does it most of the time, but he can. But, climbing trees, cutting limbs down, pruning them close into buildings, making sure it doesn't fall down in the building. Like, that's just how Steve runs, like, hard. And in working with him, Michael, as a coach, and it's been, boy, talk about sometimes going home and looking in the mirror being like, how do I get to work with guys like Steve and Jack and have conversations with them that seem to get them centered on life and seem to get them to the next level and seem to get them continuing to push ahead? But I do get to do that. And so Steve and I, over the years, it's been really fun to start looking at him as a high performer, and looking at how can he go even farther without burning out himself, without destroying his family or something? How can he manage this growing enterprise with more employees? And they even acquired a company out in Sun Valley, Idaho, called Pride of Bristol Bay. How does he start using tools like that, like being able to buy another company? And we've had to work on him, the person, because Steve, that just ran the boat hard and climbed the trees and made salmon burgers faster than anybody else, that's not how you then continue to build a company and have something grow. Because, if you keep running things the way that you did back when you started it, you tend to, people, they don't want you there, and you're going to, like, almost, you could destroy the business that you built. So it's been such a gift to see a guy like that work on him or I in your circles. And that really resonated with me, by the way, when we talked on the phone the other day. Those three circles, that idea of, like, when I get to a point and then I got to work on Rich Litvin is a coach that I've done a lot of coaching, probably, like, you're on this journey too. I've invested in myself a lot, which that's sometimes a difficult conversation at home, and something that we've had to navigate through, why a coach spends money on coaching. But we've got there. But Rich Litvin is a coach I've worked with, and Rich likes to say, what got you here won't get you there. And that's absolutely true. And it comes in all the time. And in the camp, it comes in a group setting. And then you get, if I talk with Steve in a group setting, then other people can pick up on that conversation. As long as we can all drop our egos, we can see how it applies to us, and we can, then learn from it and move forward as well.
Oh, that's a great way to illustrate it. And I guess the way that sort of landed to me, especially with the story of your client, your buddy as a fisherman, it's like, whether it's a fish or whatever it is, life is all about motion. It's about growth. Nothing is static. And, whether we think it is or not, the world is changing around us, and we've got to continue to evolve and grow and adapt. Like people who are waiting for the world to go back to the way it was pre-March of 2020, it's not going to happen. But even without this, because there are always these kind of things that happen, I love that mindset of got to move forward. You've hit a plateau. What got you here won't get you there, type of thing.
Right. Yeah, I think when this whole thing happened in March, and the rules were changed and we started staying at home, certainly people that I hang out with in these circles, these business owners, I think we all took a couple days to be like, oh my gosh, like, what is going on? And then you just start stepping forward. To your point, yeah, it's all about motion. It's like, all right, well, what am I going to do? His online sales went through the roof because of this, and because of people being uncertain about their protein supply, right? And so it forced him and his team to have to operate at a much higher level of efficiency than they had before. So it was, in a way, was kind of a blessing and a gift. And the other thing that happened to him, by the way, is that, we worked through this stuff, is he had been in Idaho right before the quarantine period started, and him and his family had some, like, cold-like symptoms, and they didn't know, and we still don't know, right, whether they had COVID or not. But he ended up staying at home and working remotely while his team did everything for 2 weeks, and with the influx of orders, and they, like, crushed it. And he learned how to lead over Zoom, which, for a guy that earlier in his life was just climbing trees, doesn't have a Facebook account, like, it's amazing. That just amazes me how a human, can be able to adapt the way that he did in that situation. So.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think this thing opens so many new opportunities. There are always these macro events around us, right? And you can look at it as a victim, or you can look at it as opportunistically. So many businesses are finding they can run just fine or even better. Employees are working harder, working longer, which isn't necessarily the best thing, but yeah, it's working for a lot of businesses. So one thing I want to ask, I want to be respectful of your time, but you mentioned Aaron Walker and another mastermind group. Wayne coming through the audience, I think is the implicit answer to this question. But I want to ask. So I mentioned the other mastermind group from a perspective of life and coaching and business not being a zero-sum game, excuse me. Um, you're a mastermind group, but you're willing to be part of another mastermind, right? You and mention it and endorse it to the audience. You're a coach who has a coach. This is awesome.
Excellent.
So, but what sets Wayne Herring apart? What makes Business Builder Camp and your mastermind different, or what's the edge that guys could look for there?
I'm going to go slightly off and I won't forget your question. I've studied with this guy, Rich Litvin, who's a coach for coaches and high performers. And I've benefited greatly by being in those group coaching programs. I've done a course with Steve Chandler, Steve and Rich, anybody out there who's an aspiring coach. They wrote a book called Prosperous Coach that'll change your life if you're a coach. Read it. And I've been in Steve's program and been around 60 other coaches for a period of 6 months, and it was transformational. So I just believe in these things so much. And Aaron Walker is the story I want to tell you. Is Aaron Walker came out with a product or course called the Mastermind Playbook. And the Mastermind Playbook lays out everything he's done to build Iron Sharpens Iron and his groups. And whenever I'm around Aaron, and when I allow him to coach me, again, it's so much like my ego is the enemy, and Stoicism by Ryan, not Stoicism by Ryan Holiday, but the book Ego is the Enemy. I've read it 3 times and I've listened on Audible, I think 4 or 5, because it just hasn't sunk in yet. But when I allow Aaron to be my coach and be the leader of my mastermind group, and when I look at the other guys in my group and I don't compare, but rather listen for the truth of what they're saying, I always grow. So anyway, Mastermind Playbook came out and I saw this and I was like, man, I miss being in Aaron Walker's group. And I think I might like to buy this playbook because I think it'll help me and give me a bunch of templates and ways of doing things. Because going back to engineering days, I'm not very structured, analytical, detail oriented. So if I could get that, great. So Aaron, I still have Aaron's cell phone number from back when, because I was one of his like really early on members. And I texted him, I said, I think I want to buy this playbook thing. And it says, well, I'm just getting out of the boat for the day, call me. So I call him and I said, look, I want to keep building this mastermind that I started. I want to keep going with Business Builder Camp. I just want you to know I want to buy Mastermind Playbook, but I plan to do that. And it's kind of sort of competitive. And he's like, buddy, he speaks in a Southern, he's very Southern. It's like, buddy, there's 8 billion people in the world. He's like, I got 150 of them. I'm sure you can find 150 of your own. He said, I put this out in the world so that you can go find your people, because a lot of people they're not going to vibe with Aaron Walker. They're not going to vibe with, Iron Sharpens Iron group, but they'll vibe with you, Wayne. And if you can go gather up your own camp and your own group, then I want you to go do that. And so I think it's worth telling that story, that he doesn't play a zero-sum game. And I've helped a bunch of coaches get going because Warren Lewis helped me. The Prosperous Coach helped me. I've had some of them as paying clients, but I'll always spend a call or two with somebody if I think they're going to do the work and if I think they're going to put the effort in. Because coaching is not competitive to me. Like they're like, who's your competition? I don't know. I really don't get that, because there's so many people don't have a coach at all, right? That the opportunities are infinite. But I will say this: if you jump on Instagram and Facebook and you're going to try to be the coach that goes on there, you will feel like it's very competitive. But that's not where most coaching clients come from, and that's not where most of this work is happening. I mean, look, you're doing this podcast, and the ability to speak and talk to people and share yourself, like that's where coaching relationships come from. So I guess what makes Business Builder Camp different? Guys like Steve Curian are in my world guys like Jack Justice, who has 2 young boys that he's working to be an awesome father to. And he's killing it with his digital agency that he's built that's all remote. He works in a little shed in Lyons, Colorado, behind his house that has this beautiful wood wall. And then he goes and speaks. And I got to go with Jack and be like his roadie last year in Louisville, Kentucky at the GIE Expo, which is like the largest landscaper expo in the world. He spoke to standing room only. And I got to take the money in the back of the room when people came up and bought his book. Like, so when people work with Business Builder Camp, they get, me and my guys. And if so the things I share fit, then it would probably be good to have a conversation. And if not, maybe, go look at Aaron Walker. Like, Iron Sharpens Iron. It's a great group of guys too. And there's other ones out there. And there's a bunch of great women's mastermind groups too. And there's a bunch of great co-ed ones. It just depends on what you're looking for and and I've done co-ed ones. Depends what you're looking for and how you're trying to grow. But do something. Find other people that get you and want to push you and encourage you. And what do they say? If you look around the room and you're the one that, if you're ahead of everybody in the room, you ought to find another room. And I wish I could tell you, where I heard that first, but that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, no, it does make a lot of sense. I definitely love some Ryan Holiday. I've got all of his books, including the Daily Stoic, which is
he has
great
one for dads now. Email that comes like every day.
I gotta check that out. I haven't seen that one from him.
Yeah, a client turned me onto it. It's super.
And Stephen Pressfield. I first read him on so I do my Spartan stuff, right? So he's got the book about the Battle of Thermopylae and the Spartan history. He also wrote Bagger Vance, right, which is a pretty
reading it right now and loving it. Incredible. It's so good.
Yeah. And the War of Art, I was prompted by Ryan Mickler to read that. And at the same time on his reading list, I read Steal Like an Artist, which is also really interesting and applicable to business.
I don't know that one.
The concept there, it's similarly framed as more of an artistic or creative pursuit, but the concept is the same, which is that you're not literally plagiarizing somebody's work, but there's nothing sort of new in the universe, right? You can find inspiration and you bring your own talent and your own uniqueness to whatever it is you focus on.
Right.
Which is similar to coaching. I have found that, and it surprised me quite honestly, but I find myself so enriched and challenged and pushed in every coaching relationship as a coach, that I hadn't expected. Yeah. I expected, well, the client's going to get most of the benefit and hopefully they get great value out of it. But I found tremendous value as a coach and growth in that.
Yeah.
You probably find the same, but if it's not out of bounds, I'll give you my impression of Wayne and Business Builder, and kind of the answer to that same question, because I think to me, it came through pretty loud in everything that we just talked about. Your humility to answer that question by referencing not something about yourself and your program, but your clients is amazing, right? The peer group you put together, and there's no way you would have that relationship, that the quality of those relationships with those men, if it weren't the things you do to create connections, the transparency we talked about, and that introspection to learn from your own journey and help connect guys to make each other better. So said differently, abundance, right? Whether it's mastermind to mastermind, but the willingness to bring a group of men together, make each of us better individually, collectively, a lot better as a group, as a community, as a business, whatever that might look like. That's what it sounds like Business Builder Camp could do for people.
Yeah, imagine what we could all do together. You mentioned Ryan Mickler. Like, I like Order of Man stuff a lot. You're working here in this medium, Man of Mastery. I've got my little camp. Aaron Walker. Like, imagine if we all keep pushing forward with our vision and keep gathering people up and just being intentional, the kind of change we could make in the world. It's pretty cool.
It kind of give you chills. You start to think about it. As you know, my son and I run Spartan races, and Joe DeSena says that his mission is to rip 100 million people off their couch and get them moving. He's nowhere close, right? So even if you have a goal of 100 million people, and he's been doing it for 20 years, right? So I think there's room for all of us, and I appreciate what you're doing over there. Before we wrap up, so you mentioned if this sounds like a potential fit, it's worth a conversation. What are the best ways to tune into what you're doing and to reach out if somebody wants that conversation?
Yeah. So what I did, and what Joni and I did, was put together a team or a page called businessbuildercamp.com/mastery. So if listeners go to businessbuildercamp.com/mastery, that page has been created especially for you. And we put a couple of tools there. So one thing is it's the best life inventory tool. And that's a tool that they're going to be able to get without, you don't even have to give me your email address. I just want you to have it. And it's to take stock, see where you're at, get clear on what is missing, and then identify some small steps that you could take immediately or over the next 90 days and write them down so that you have it clear on a one pager. The other thing that's there is a business builder. It's the Business Builder Way short course. And in that course, there's a series of 5 emails that we put together to give people the same tools that we use when we gather up the camp for that interval that I talked about, where we do taking stock and taking inventory and then planning the next 120 days. So those tools will all be on that sheet in the short course. And then the other thing is there's a link there to book into my calendar for a 20-minute conversation. So what I would say is if you have a business and you might be interested in Mastermind Group, or if you're just getting started or a little bit farther away and you want to experiment with Basecamp, the program where you get a journal and you get the 120-day plan, book a call, and no expectations. There's not going to be you've spent enough time with me on this call. I'm gonna be curious and learn about who you are and what you're up to and what you're trying to build, and see if I can pour into you a little bit. And at the end of that, if it seems like you ought to sign up for a program, great. And if I think it's, I should send you to Aaron Walker or back to Michael, whatever, I'm going to do that. So there'll be a link there to grab a short time on my calendar too.
Well, thank you for doing that. That sounds like a great set of tools, and certainly will encourage people to get out there. I love that you're, not even a squeeze page for the first thing, right? We can jump right in and check it out. Amazing that you're offering those. At the same time, I will also say, I think the dirty secret to all this stuff is frameworks, silver bullets, 90-day plans. Those are all a great starting place, but it's all about doing the work.
Absolutely.
Right? It's about putting in the reps and working the process. So love talking to you again, Wayne, and really appreciate all this stuff. Hope to get some people over your way to look at the framework and hopefully get started and put the reps in.
Well, if they fill it out and they come to us, we're going to kick your butt and keep you moving. And I know I'm going to learn from you too. And this was really great. Great conversation. Thanks for having me. And take care.
Yeah, no, I love it. Every time we talk, I learn more, and I'm better off than I was an hour ago. So I really appreciate you, Wayne.
Likewise.
All right. Thank you again to Wayne Herring of Business Builder Camp. Super cool guy. A lot of fun to talk to. We've talked several times, even off air now, and really enjoyed the connection. So I hope you'll take advantage as well of the tools and the time that Wayne and Business Builder Camp are offering our listeners exclusively. You can find the link to get in touch with them and sign up for that information. The link is on our website in the show notes for this episode at manofmastery.com/063. And book the time. Spend 20 minutes. Have a chat with Wayne. You never know what's going to come out of a connection like that. Highly, highly recommend it. All right, guys, next week we're off, right? We're on a 2-week schedule now. So coming up in 2 weeks from today, we have the story of Unrelenting Humans. This is an awesome nonprofit in the making, and I think you're going to like the story behind it, and where it's headed. So 2 weeks from today, next episode with Unrelenting Humans.